Nigerians observe Easter with church services nationwide.
Because he rose, he gave us victory over death.
The principle there is the principle of sacrifice.
President Buhari rejoices with Nigerians at Easter as he condemns attacks on churches and hotels in Sri Lanka.
Zamfara state government assures Nigerian Air Force of cooperation as it goes after bandits.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we search for connectivity between spirituality and nation building as Christians mark Easter.
Many studies have suggested that societies are built on many pillars that guide human conduct and define progress and developments. Such pillars equally reflect the character and principles that citizens of such societies imbibe over time.
Indeed, Kiri, and of course, those submissions have just alluded to have also identified pillars such as the family, government, and politics, as well as economy, education, arts, and culture, and even the media,
exactly.
Including, of course, the health sector.
All right, now in addition to these pillars, many also say the pillar of spirituality is very crucial in every nation because it relates to service and worship of God and the need for intimate and deep relationship with the supernatural.
Of course, I was going to say Nigeria is known for, her very vast religious inclinations, of course, with millions of citizens professing, one religion or the other, and even traditional religion, of course, which, has been there before. And most times, most of the spiritual people in the world, are said to, be in Africa, specifically Nigeria.
Exactly.
Many public and private events begin and end with prayers here in Nigeria.
Now, Claire, it's no news that today is Easter Monday, the day after the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And that is why Christians in Nigeria are joining their counterparts around the world to commemorate this very important event. And again, Claire, when you talk about Easter Monday, in the course of the program, we'll find out whether there is any biblical obligation to observe Easter Monday.
Of course, we will find out because we have we'll be having some clergymen here with us. But also as part of our reflection today on the significance of Easter and its application to human life and nation building, we have also decided to take a wider look at the significance or the connection between spirituality and nation building.
So this morning, we intend to look at the place of spiritual belief, particularly of the dominant faiths in Nigeria to nation building. In other words, to what extent does spirituality define human conduct in Nigeria? How does it help in solving the nation's many challenges?
Quite a foray will be undertaken, Nigerian. And one can also ask, as deeply a religious nation as we are, do we walk the talk of our level of spirituality, given, of course, the level of so many things: intolerance, corruption, hate speech, violence, and, of course, other forms of crime in the country? Where is the disconnect, and how can, those fault lines be addressed?
Tough question there, Claire, and we shall be joined by a robust group of experts in a moment to get some answers. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria today, Easter Monday. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Claire Delabu Abdul Razak. Always good to have you join us, especially this Monday. It's, of course, the Ascension Day in Christian calendar, and we're broadcasting live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. As always, the complimentary part of the program, hopefully, we will be bringing them to you. But of course, we will have newspaper review, business, sports, foreign arts and entertainment, and sports will take the rear. Najatu Tijani is waiting for the early morning news. Hello, Najatu.
Hello, Claire and Kirian. Here is the morning news with me, Najatu Tijani. Christians all over Nigeria have commemorated Easter with various messages focusing on the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. They were implored to imbibe the spirit of good neighborliness, which will promote national unity and development.
The resurrection of Jesus Christ showed that after death there is life. So he was resurrected to show us that there is life after death and there is a place we are all going.
The principle there is the principle of sacrifice. Not living your life for your own self, but living your life in order to promote others.
Christ did not rise today as we celebrate. Our hope in him would have been in vain. But because he rose, he gave us victory over death.
We want peace, we want justice, we want this nation to move forward, and we want Nigeria to become that enviable nation of the world.
Similarly, President Muhammadu Buhari is encouraging the bond of brotherhood and good neighborliness at Easter. In his Easter message, the president says Easter is the most important feast in the Christian calendar and represents God's redemptive mission over humanity. The president rejoices with all Nigerians, especially Christian brethren, on the glorious occasion of the celebration on Easter, asking them to intensify prayers for the country with promises not to take his re-election for granted. President Buhari enjoins Nigerians to emulate the virtues of love, sacrifice, forgiveness, and endurance, which Christ embodied and demonstrated during his earthly ministry. He describes the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ as a triumph over light and over darkness, hope over despair, and good over evil. In the meantime, the prelate, Methodist Church of Nigeria, Dr. Kalu Uche, is asking Christians to use the Easter celebrations to reflect on the humble and peaceful life and nature of Jesus Christ as Savior of mankind. The prelate said the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ should bring joy and hope to Christians, believing that righteousness thrives forever. Dr. Kalu Uche says the celebration should be seen as an invitation to a new way of life which is against corruption, hatred, tribalism, and perversion of justice. The prelate challenges all Nigerians, irrespective of religion, tribe, or political affiliation, to pray for restoration of a great Nigeria on the path of steady growth. In the same vein, the primate of the Church of the Lord, Rufus Ositelu, asks all believers to live a righteous life of love, peace, and harmony, devoid of hatred, wickedness, and corruption. He asks the Church to continue to intercede for Nigeria for good governance, peace and security, and prosperity in the country. Meanwhile, the Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Baba Abubakar, has emphasized the need for officers and men of the Nigerian Air Force to continue to maintain vigilance and a high sense of professionalism in the course of discharging their constitutional responsibilities. He stated this in Yola while hosting officers of the 153 Base Service Group to an Easter celebration to commemorate the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
These get-togethers also foster comradeship and give us the opportunity to commend ourselves for our efforts in the fight against the insurgency.
This is no doubt a great encouragement to the men in battle. Additionally, it further shows the priority of the Chief of the Air Staff towards personnel motivation.
And that was the Chief of Policy and Plans there representing the Chief. In a related development, Zamfara State Governor Abdulaziz Yari has charged the Nigerian Air Force not to be deterred by the allegation of collateral damage leveled against its personnel by the State Council of Chiefs. The governor said this when he received members of an investigative panel sent by the Nigerian Air Force headquarters, who paid him a courtesy visit.
As far as concerned, and head of government, I haven't anything wrong with the activities of Air Force. So therefore, anybody who wants to say anything, he should go and say outside and say it. Errors occur in the course of duty.
We are commending Nigeria Air Force. What has happened as a mistake. Information released by our councils as a press statement. It's not intended to discredit the Nigerian Air Force.
Now, the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing says the third mainland bridge is still functioning and does not pose any structural danger to the bridge, and it is safe for use. The ministry added that the third mainland bridge was shut down for a 3-day investigative maintenance routine in August 2018, where tests were carried out. However, all the tests done to the closure of the bridge to commence comprehensive maintenance indicates that integrity of the bridge is intact, and therefore the bridge is safe for use, and people should desist from spreading or sharing false information about the bridge on social media platforms. And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kirian and Claire after this break.
Life evolves. You should too. 3G is great. 4G is better. Buy an Airtel SIM to enjoy double data on Nigeria's widest 4G network. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Team huddle.
But we lost.
Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Marketing of broadcast media products requires special skills which can only be acquired through training and experience. NTA TV College Jos is therefore organizing an intensive 3-week course on modern trends in broadcast media marketing. The course will equip participants with necessary skills to deal with contemporary marketing challenges and competition in the broadcast media. It is an essential course for marketers in the broadcast media to sharpen their skills and improve their capacities. Date 23rd April to 10th May 2019. Venue NTA Television College Refuge Jos. Course fee 100,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please contact us on 0803 314 4383 or 0806 980 9807. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hello and welcome to the program. It's Good Morning Nigeria if you've just joined in, and time for us to talk business. Now, business is still low in most parts of the country, and that's, of course, as Nigerians relish the remaining hours left of the Easter holidays. Regardless, Nigerian entrepreneur is advocating more commitment to small and medium-scale enterprises, that's SMEs, and that's to achieve a balanced economy. We have details of this on the business news, and that's with Joy Uzo.
Happy Easter to Christian faithful out there, and as the public holiday to mark the celebration continues today, financial institutions and major economic activities remain shut down to business. Where can other business activities resume tomorrow after the holiday? In the meantime, Nigeria has cut its official selling prices of a basket of May-loading crude oil grades in a bid to attract buyers. The nation's crude oil was quoted by industry players as having a difficult time clearing in recent weeks because offer concentrations were too high to attract buying interest from European refineries. Nigeria therefore released its official selling prices for May, showing a decrease for major grades by around 20 to 25 cents compared with April. And it is no longer news that most economies of the Asian tigers have grown over the years because they are SMEs based. Those who encourage the growth of small and medium-scale enterprises, SMEs, are the ones that enjoy a vibrantly driven economy because they form a larger chunk of the population. This is coming from experts in the entrepreneurial field as they advise government and spirited individuals in Nigeria to gainfully engage the youths.
Ability to point people in the direction that this is one way to go, and one of the surest ways in alleviating poverty and creating jobs in developing our continent is entrepreneurship, and they see how we do it. Our aspiration or intent, hope is that it will ginger others to join and do their own.
And to stocks, investors gained 197.51 billion naira week on week as the Nigerian Stock Exchange appreciated by 1.78%. To close the week ended April 18 positive at 30,086.31. Next is a graphic summary of the closing figures. That's business news. Many thanks for your time. I'm Joy Uzo.
And that's Joy Uzo with today's business news. And up ahead on Good Morning Nigeria newspaper review.
All right, Bayo is here. Bayo, should I say compliment of the season to you?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you. It's Easter, and Easter stands for peace and goodwill to all mankind in our nation and in the world. Good morning. Good morning, Kerian, and good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, Claire, we have about 4 newspapers here, plus, of course, the editorial. But let's begin with the Nigerian Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun newspaper, just beside the Daily Sun newspaper nameplate, we have "My parents from Sokoto, Jigawa," says Atiku. And of course, the lead story this morning is borrowing as the kicker. IMF, World Bank restate fears for Nigeria. And then with a rider, "No cause for alarm," says the minister. That story is on page 8. And you can see the photograph on the Daily Sun newspaper. That's the victim of an accident on Berger Bridge being rescued from burnt car in Abuja just yesterday, the Easter Sunday. And now below that we have Zamfara, Yari defense airstrikes. It's on page 9. And Sharia Council, ACF disagree on security with 3 riders. Federal government efforts inadequate, says SCSN, Task of Ensuring Security Not for Government Alone. That's by Ariwa. It's on page 6. Now, National Assembly leadership, I have no ulterior motive, says Tinubu. It's on page 6. Then at the bottom, the Cabinet Buhari Needs by Bakare. It's on page 41. Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Trust. And it leads with heat wave hits Borno, Kano, Adamawa, Katsina, and others. And of course, that story that Kieran just read earlier on is also trending just below the nameplate. My parents are from Sokoto, Jigawa, and that's from Atiku. You can read up the details on page 13. Now, for UTME student candidates, JAM says no results released yet. You can read up the details of that on page 3. And budget delay will cause inflation, affect GDP. That's coming from experts. Details of that on page 17. And below the name, trending at the bottom of the paper there, abductors of Kajuru Castle workers demand 60 million naira. Why I support Lawan and Badabia Mila by Tinubu, page 13. And debt, we are mindful of our borrowings, says federal government, page 17. And if we look at the front page of the Punch, it's also taking the health line this morning, and it says CMDs lamenting inadequate funding of teaching hospitals. And you need to look at the riders there. They're quite scary, and Bayo will speak to that in a short while. And sadly, the picture story, of course, it's been talked about in the news and in the papers, that explosions in Sri Lanka hotels and churches which killed more than 200 worshippers. You can find details of that on page 12. There are other stories trending, as well as that of the UTME, which says here candidates will be able to check results with their phones. That's coming from JAM. It's on page 41. But a little just below the nameplate, on the right column, you will find Honore removed from NJC membership list, and Rhodes Vivo to be named deputy chair. Details of that you can find on page 10. Bayo.
Yes, let's start with the sad news that happened over Easter. Over 200 people were killed in 8 devastating bomb blasts that took place in Colombo in Sri Lanka. There are 35 foreigners among those that were killed. 6 bombs were detonated in quick succession, and 2 others followed hours later. Archbishop of Colombo has described those behind the attack as animals and called on the authorities in Sri Lanka to punish them mercilessly. President Muhammad Buhari has condoled the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and families of those killed. He says Nigeria stands with all victims of terrorism all over the world. This is because Nigeria knows and understands this harrowing, inhuman activity. President Muhammad Buhari urged the authorities not to spare any effort and ensure that the wicked behind the attacks are brought to book. Pope Francis denounced the cruel violence on Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka in his traditional Obi, that is, to the city and to the world. He enjoined political leaders to put aside differences and work instead for peace. He said, "May the one who gives us his peace end the roar of arms, both in areas of conflict and in our cities." And he said leaders should be inspired to work for an end arms race. He prayed for the dead and the injured. And coming back home here, criminals who abducted 3 staff of on a holiday resort in Kajuru, the resort is called Castle Hotel, have demanded 60 million as ransom. They had abducted 5, but 2 of them managed to escape. The government, who tried to gain entry by firing shots into the resort, unfortunately killed an expatriate and another partner who came from Lagos. The expatriate is said to be a Briton, a staff of the Mercy Corps in Nigeria. 2 mobile policemen who were on guard duty there did not succeed in repelling the abductors. The victims were tourists from Lagos and were attacked around 11:30 a.m. after they were having the party. Very sad indeed.
Very sad, very sad indeed. And the one in Sri Lanka is what really baffled many across the globe, because looking at the history of Sri Lanka, you know, it's a country of multi-ethnic groupings and religion. In fact, they have four key religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and Islam. And what was one?
And even animists.
Exactly. They were wondering as to who must have taken this ugly step, you know, because there's nothing like a religious intolerance at the moment that could lead to such attack yesterday.
The initial reports indicate that some of them were suicide attacks, suicide bombing attacks, but there are no indications whether others were remotely controlled, but the authorities are still putting their dragnet there, and no persons have been so far reported. Yes, so far. But
no group has claimed responsibility for that.
No group will claim responsibility for criminality. But whether it is in Colombo or anywhere in the world, or even in Christchurch, where there were shootings about last month, it is condemnable. You cannot take human life. Human life is sacrosanct.
And in a place of worship, for that matter.
Baya, you also would wish to speak to the issue of the CMD's lamenting inadequate funding of teaching hospitals.
You know, the challenge of our hospitals...
Let me just read out some of the riders. We have been surviving through donations from well-meaning Nigerians, alumni, and foreign donors. 8 million naira monthly statutory allocations as running costs, and they may not get this money more than once in 4 months. And of course, not to talk of the electricity, bill, which they say on average is about 13 million naira monthly. And this is specifically from the OAU, that is Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital.
And the same situation applies to many of such teaching hospitals. And sadly, they are supposed to be referral hospitals that are locations of excellence, where the referral cases from primary and other secondary hospitals are supposed to go to. But the challenge has always been that there's not enough resources to man all the hospitals. So far, Nigeria has far below the United Nations recommended ratio for budgetary allocation, both for health, for education, and even for water resources. So resources has always been a challenge. But then, again, the sad thing is that when there is a budget, you have to wait until the resources turn in before budgetary allocations are sent. So if you have a budget of about 8 million, you're right there, and resources are not available, by the time they get it, the period for the year is gone.
You know, there was a time we had a conversation on improving the healthcare sector, and I remember, I think it was Dr. Christopher Otabo who said, look, it's high time we started, viewing healthcare services as a business, and by so doing, you'll be able to address the issues of funding,
Well, when you address it as a business, it means that people will go there for the services and they pay for the services they get. Fine, but look at our society. There is health insurance, particularly now, for people who are in government services. So that takes up a lot of cost. But think of the ordinary Nigerian, many of who cannot afford high cost. Even now, as it is, in primary health care, government has volunteered that treatment like things like malaria should be very free. But sometimes you find out even the drugs and the facilities are inadequate supply. Primary health care is the responsibility of local government. Local government itself is not properly funded. So you can see that even from the foundational level, the challenges are enormous.
There are challenges. Okay, Kieran, you have other stories?
Just have a Blueprint newspaper here. Is the last one that I have. Let's look at the stories that below the nameplate of a Blueprint newspaper. My support for Lawan, but Jabia not for 2023 elections, Tinubu says. And of course, besides the Blueprint nameplate, we have custom generates 311.2 billion naira in 3 months. Is on page 34. Fuel scarcity hit Damaturu 4 liter jerry can goes for 800 naira. Now the lead story: why Buhari is still silent on Onogen. NJC's recommendation: dangerous path to tread. And of course, at the bottom of a Blueprint newspaper. But before that, the picture you see there is exactly linked to what Bayo just analyzed a short while ago about what happened in Kaduna yesterday. Now, these are residents of Kaduna actually, blocking the highway, protesting the kidnap of 5 persons, including 2 pregnant women in Kaduna, and that happened just yesterday. But below that, we have most of our authors plan Leah Sharibu Chibok Girls Rescue. It's on page 8. Bauchi IDP's kids suffer feed on onion leaves. Yeah. It's on page 16. No apologies over Zamfara airstrikes, says Yari. It's on page 9. And of course, Buhari condemns attacks on Christians in Sri Lanka.
Yes. The Kaduna report you are referring to that's there on the Punch actually took place in the suburb of Kaduna. It's called Narai. The gunmen went there and adopted a pregnant, 9-month-old pregnant woman and her child. 2 of them are now the subject of police inquiry, and they are trying to see where they are. They came into that suburb in the outskirts, Namdi Azikwe Expressway. They bypassed through Kaduna. That was where this happened. And now the challenge was that the people of Narai felt completely unsafe, and they had to come out onto the street and demonstrate. And that's why they blocked the highway. But the security have restored order, and I think they are on the trail of the kidnappers. But meanwhile,
let's quickly look at the editorial bio.
Yes. Okay. Just one quick information. The Joint Admission and Matriculation Board has said that it is false news, all the information about the release results, and it says that a result will be sent to the telephone numbers of the registered candidates. So the information out there should be ignored.
Okay, let's quickly take a look at the editorial, of course, which is coming from the Al Jazeera News. First, it is concerned about, of course, after the minimum wage ascent, what next? And quickly, it says it is urging the government to take proactive measures to curtail any likely untoward circumstance that would make the pay increase a wasted effort. But there is a particular paragraph I'd just like to read that bio to you. It says, it is time for Nigeria to become more resilient in its labor practices so as to enhance the status of the worker. Disgustingly, this paper says, as Nigeria struggles with 30,000 naira minimum wage, its counterpart, that South Africa, has concluded plans to pay her workers equivalent of 126,480 naira per month.
Yes, in fact, the editorial by Al Jazeera made a comparison, and on that basis, it said that South Africa, in its own terms, will be paying about 527 naira equivalent on the hourly basis. On a daily basis, it will be paying about 4,216, and in a month, it will be giving 126,480. And compared to Nigeria, Nigeria will be paying 125 naira per hour, 1,000 naira a month equivalent, and 30,000 naira per annum. It says government should actually put up measures to ensure that its gesture to help workers is not frittered away by uncontrolled inflation. And it says that this, if it is not checked, will erode all the initiative of government to improve the status of the worker.
But it also says that we've started somewhere. You know, as they say, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Well, no doubt about that.
This journey you're talking about
it was 18,000 before.
Several years ago.
Yes,
right.
It was 18,000 before. You now have about 30 to 6% increase.
Well, that's well said. But I've also read that many governors are still saying that they cannot pay that 30,000 naira. In fact, some said about 95% of the governors cannot pay. So that means we are in for another chapter altogether. You know,
whether can pay or cannot pay. By law, it is incumbent on them as persons who are elected and to abide and execute laws of the Federation to find the means to pay. If they manage their resources, they can pay. They should improve their IGR and find ways of paying.
That's all about that's a function of managing the scarce resources adequately.
All right.
And on that note, we thank Bayo Atoyebi for being part of the show today, as always. And we'll expect him again tomorrow. Bayo, thank you indeed. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, Easter Monday edition of the program. We'll return very shortly and, of course, deliberate on the issue of spirituality and national development.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capful for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol Antiseptic Liquid in Sachet for only 40 naira.
Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toma Dabaden and Ishak Modibo-Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Getting around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 8 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
Right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We're set to begin our conversation, of course, talking about Easter, and we're discussing, just as a reminder, the connection between spirituality and nation building. Now, for a background report, let's welcome Kunle Adeye.
Easter season is the time Christians mark the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ, which symbolizes victory over death and assurance for eternal life. To Christians, therefore, the celebration of Easter is beyond merriment, as they consider this a deeply spiritual moment where believers need reawakening that will make them understand the essence of sacrifice and sanctity of human life as exemplified by Jesus Christ himself. There are many religions in the world which profess and teach the virtues of piety, tolerance, kindness, selflessness, sacrifice, forgiveness, love, and compassion. Perhaps this is why many see spirituality as one of the pillars that holds society, because it deals with the belief in the supernatural and life thereafter. But many have equally asked, does the level of spirituality of a people, community, or nation guarantee peace, development, and progress? This perhaps could be a subject of debate for a long time. However, if the virtues taught by various faiths are anything to go by, one would expect that there is less of intolerance, wickedness, corruption, greed, and high disregard for the rule of law. With many Nigerians professing one form of spirituality or the other, many have wondered why it has remained a challenge to attain peaceful coexistence that is based on tolerance, forgiveness, and love. This bewilderment is heightened when one considers some cases of violence and disagreements that are either given religious connotations or are said to be carried out in persons of faith. Little wonder there has been consistent advocacy for Nigerians to use their spirituality for national development, where the teachings of most adherents will guide their response to everyday conduct. Teachings by many religious leaders in the country have always centered on tolerance, obedience to authority, and also admonition to those in authority to be selfless, just, and fair in all their conduct as they govern and manage resources that belong to all. As Nigerians mark the Easter season, which is a commemoration of death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the question arises as to how much this significant Christian event will be reflected in the life of Christians who are expected to reflect on the virtues of the Savior who did not only teach humility, service and sacrifice, but paid the ultimate price for humanity by going to the cross despite having no sin. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will reflect on the question of spirituality and nation building shortly.
Thank you indeed, Kunle, for that background report. Now, joining us in the studio to discuss the topic is Reverend Father George Ehusani. He's Director, Lock Star Foundation, Abuja. Father, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And also here with us is Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, and Senior Fellow, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Oka. It's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Ikechukwu.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And of course, we're discussing both significance of Easter and the spirituality and nation building. So we'll have in our studio Chief Imam of Apu Legislative Quarters Mosque here in Abuja, Imam Nura Khalid. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll also go to our Enugu Network Center, from where Monsignor Obiora Ike, who is also a professor, executive director of Globe Ethics, Geneva in Switzerland, is joining us. Thank you very much for finding time to be with us this morning.
Thank you, madam, and good morning, all participants.
Let's begin with you, Professor Obiora Ike. Now, give us a sense of this ecclesiastical event known as Easter. And of course, in doing this, we'd also like you to contextualize the religious circumstances that formed the setting for Easter.
We have in our traditional worshipings, in religions all over the world, the aspect of mystery. Mystery which is truth beyond even what human beings can normally understand. And this is where Easter fits in. Easter fits into the life of a concrete human person, Jesus Christ, who was born in Bethlehem by Mary, who lived like a normal human being, and yet who is the Word of God made flesh to dwell among us. This entire life of Jesus Christ has been symbolized by a life of complete identity of teaching and of living. And in that, his teachings, that others may have life, that others may grow, that others may know God better, he had to go through it all in also opening the doors even of heaven for a humanity that had lost contact with the divine. In the teachings of Christ, he spoke about sacrifice, he spoke about giving up, he spoke about love, he spoke about dying and even transcending death. Because of his teachings, he got jealousy and enmity. And this is something we know around us. But having to die for others on the cross against all forms of injustice, because there was a kangaroo justice led by Pilate. They put him out there and killed him. Since God is with him, Jesus transcended death. And the story is, which we believe not only in faith, but it has been proven by over 2,000 years of Christian history, that the man they killed rose again on the third day. And he was seen by many, he appeared several times, and his resurrection, his dying to rise again, has become the foundation for Christians sharing in the new life which is beyond the current life. That gives us the faith that when we die, we live again. It gives us the faith that even when we live again, we live in God's kingdom. It gives us the faith that darkness has not the last word. It gives us the faith to start struggling, working for, making sacrifices that human beings may have a better tomorrow. Jesus Christ has therefore become the symbol of life after death. Easter is the name for this word, but Easter comes from ancient Greek and Egyptian language, oistera, which stands for the egg. the egg that breaks open so that a new chick may emerge. During Easter, you have the Easter egg being given in some cultures, like in Germany or Switzerland or many other places. That language is coined even here on African soil. Oistera, Easter, the feast that life is the strongest principle. This is mystery, and mystery is something that is not mathematical. It's not just naturally scientific. So you may believe or you may not believe, but things about faith deal with belief. Belief are things you cannot still prove, but there are truths that exist beyond human capacity to know. I will think that for us in Nigeria, the current year of Easter and all the Easters we celebrate strengthen our faith to know that through hard work, through sacrifice, through self-giving, through immolation, through practice of peace, of love, of justice, of integrity, looking at the example of Christ, who lived what he taught. He did not teach differently and live differently. He is the embodiment of life and action. His dying is our own dying, and he did it innocently to give others life. It is a great lesson and a great challenge for all people, especially in our country, but also those who are particularly Christians and those who are not, to respect religions, respect the beliefs in other religions, respect freedoms of people, and work for life, which Christ came to bring to us. This is what I think.
Professor Obiaraike, thank you. And indeed, you touched on a very critical aspect, the fact of the mystery of this period. But let me bring in Reverend Father George Ehusani. I'd like for you, Father, to give us a deeper sense of understanding of this mystery, which of course, comprise the 3 days that we commemorate as Easter, beginning from Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and, today we call Ascension Monday. Now, how does someone who volunteered to, die, the death of someone, turn into salvation for humanity?
Okay, let's take it back to the Old Testament. Easter that we celebrate today, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, happened within the context of the Passover feast of the Jews. In the book of Exodus, we read about how the Jews who were slaves in Egypt were freed. And God performed wonderful miracles to set them free from Pharaoh and for them to be liberated through the Red Sea. To get the children of Israel out of slavery, God had to perform unusual works, miracles. Now, one of those things that took place is that there was the offering of the lamb, the sacrifice of the lamb. And the blood of the lamb was meant to be placed at the doorpost of all the Jews, so that when the final plague, the killing of the firstborns of the Egyptians came, every house that was marked by the blood of the lamb, the destroyer passed over. Now, from that moment, God instructed Moses that every year they were to celebrate the Passover feast. And it became the biggest feast they celebrated every year. Now, it is within the context of the celebration of the Passover that Jesus was killed. As we read in the scriptures, when he was killed on a Friday, the next day was the Passover feast. What we have in our Christian faith is a new Passover. Rather than the blood of a lamb being sacrificed, it is the blood of the Son of God himself. It is the Son of God himself that died to see us pass over from sin to righteousness, from condemnation to salvation. So that relationship with the Old Testament needs to be underscored. Now, every religion places a lot of premium on sacrifice. In fact, all religions are built on sacrifice, genuine religions. And that's why Mahatma Gandhi says one of the greatest abuses today is religion without sacrifice.
So when you have religion that all they talk about is prosperity and abundance and so on, then something is wrong, because religions are built on sacrifice. The Jewish religion was built on the sacrifice of Abraham. Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac and his willingness to sacrifice Isaac. The Jewish religion was built on that. So the Christian religion is built on the sacrifice of Jesus himself, who offered himself, Son of God, but who offered himself for our salvation. Now, we celebrate during the Holy Week, Monday to Friday preceding Easter, we celebrate the various events that culminated on the cross of Calvary. And then we observe Saturday when he was in the grave, and then we celebrate the Sunday that he rose from the dead. Now, Monday is not the Ascension. Ascension is 40 days after. Okay. Monday is Galilee Day. When Jesus Christ appeared to the women after rising from the dead, he told them to tell my disciples that they will see me in Galilee. I would appear to them in Galilee. So, Jesus died in Jerusalem, rose up in Jerusalem, but he appeared in Galilee to his disciples.
Okay, let's pause. Let's pause you for a while. And I like Dr. Ikechukwu. Dr. Ikechukwu, do you think logic can be applied, in that event? Is there any logicality in that event?
Logic without intuition can only lead to confusion. So in applying logic, we must also bring in our humanity. For instance, when a mother sees danger, and because of the child faces the danger, is that logical? The logical thing will be for her to protect herself. So let's not focus on intellectual logic. Okay. I would rather, in the matter of the subject of Easter, take a spiritual focus that will draw on the essence. Resurrection means coming to life anew, which means that prior to that there were circumstances that suggested a challenge to life itself. So when we say that the Lord rose from the dead, I interpret it to mean that he rose from among the spiritually dead. He came from out of divinity. He is not one of us. For me too, when you say that a man was sacrificed in Israel for our salvation, I take a slightly different view, because the implication is that because he had 2 legs, 2 eyes, the same form as us, that indeed that was a man. That is open to argument. The occupant of the body was not a human being. That's the essential difference about his mission. And in all the things he said, when he said, I and the Father are one, you're looking at one who is speaking of life itself. When people speak of God, what do they mean? He is life, needing something, nothing else to sustain him, and on whom every other thing depends. And so he who comes from him is coming from out of life, that's number one, came to the earth in order to dispense knowledge and bring about salvation. So that the essence of his coming was the teaching he brought. And truly he came among mostly the spiritually dead. And what do I mean by that? The priests, the Pharisees, all the learned men and presumed spiritual leaders of the time should have been the first to recognize him when he came. But they were the ones who opposed him, which means they were serving the opposite of what he represented. And you also recall that there was a time, as recorded in the Bible, when he had to say, let the dead bury their dead. I think it was when he went to preach in Capernaum. Nobody, out of an entire city, only one person followed him. So for him to be there, the Word incarnate, the radiation of his divinity, made no impression on them. Even the words he spoke, it can only mean that they are dead spiritually to the vitality he brought. And so on account of that, then, it was possible to describe them as spiritually dead. So when you say that resurrection from the dead, coming to bring the kind of knowledge that will wake people up spiritually to return, and then rising from among them back to where he came from. It is in that sense that I will take resurrection. And Easter will then refer to the possibility of salvation based on that knowledge about the Almighty, about how men should be, live, and about what they should not do. That's a much more...
all right.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You're already speaking like a reverend father. That's a good analysis coming from you. And I had wanted to return to Obiorike, but for now, let's hear from Imam of the legislative quarters, mosque, Imam Nora Khalid. There are inevitable linkages between Islam and Christianity, biblically and Quranically. Now, what does Easter mean to Islam?
Well, to Islam, the issue of Jesus Christ being crucified does not arise, because Islamically we believe that somebody was mistakenly crucified instead of Jesus Christ. But the teachings of Jesus Christ, that sacrifice, that spirituality, that love, that tolerance, and most importantly, the issue of humanity is the same in the Quran and in the Bible.
Okay, let me just ask you, within this period, of the holidays, everybody is enjoying, relishing the holidays and all that. How do non-Christians share in this festivity?
We share it by extending love messages and showing happiness to our brothers, the Christians, telling them Happy Easter, sharing with them what they have for us to show love and to show oneness. Because we are first of all humans before we become Christians or Muslims. And we share the same humanity. And as such, the difference in our ideology, in our faith, will not determine our coexistence. That is why a good Muslim always celebrate with the Christians whatever celebration they are doing, being it Christmas, being it Easter, Good Friday, or whatever.
One of the key words that have come out from all those who have spoken so far is the issue of sacrifice. What is the place of sacrifice amongst, non-Christians?
Remember when he said the Jews have sacrificed to follow the teachings of Abraham. I think we share the same thing with them. The difference is we sacrifice instead ram and saying that, or believing that Abraham alayhi salam intended to sacrifice Ishmael, not Isaac. That is the difference. But the motive behind sacrificing the animal is to show how we can sacrifice our feelings to others, for others. Our own feelings, not only to sacrifice an animal without meaning or for the flesh. No, as we now slaughter the animal, we kill its spirit. Now we now want to share our spirit with others, the spirit of love, the spirit of accommodating, the spirit of tolerance, the spirit of helping. That is the meaning of sacrifice to a good Muslim.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Before we actually dovetail into the issue of spirituality and good governance or national development, let me return to Professor Obiorike again. Prof, you ended your first comment with the belief system, that when it comes to religion, is either you believe or you don't. But reminiscing about the event of Easter Sunday morning, you will recall that there was reluctance in accepting the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Even Mary Magdalene, there was this reluctance that happened. And I want you to link this with what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians, I think chapter 15, verse 14, when he said that if Christ was not raised, what would have been the faith of Christians. I want you to dwell on this and let us understand why that initial reluctance. This was a man that they have moved around with, they have believed in, especially the women folk among them. Mary Magdalene, of course, we knew, was also cured by Christ, and she had this ultimate belief in Christ. She has also contributed her wealth in ensuring that the church was running at the time. So what happened among them at that particular period that he rules?
To thank you and thank the listeners for this very interesting conversation. The key things around the Feast of Easter spectacularly is mystery, like I said earlier. Mystery are truths, but these truths are not mathematical truths. They are not simply logical truths. They are not even intellectual truths. They may play a role, but the mystery of the spirit, when we say a human being is made up of mind, body, and soul. When you talk about the soul level, the spirit level, these are things you cannot just quantify or even simply qualify or touch. And we are dealing with a topic that is really very, very deep. It is faith, and faith is the launch into a leap beyond that which you can see or simply touch. The death of a human being is normally, in all cultures, the end for that physical body. We put the body into a grave, we pour sand on this body, we cover the earth, and the spirit or the soul has gone. What happens with it? With Christ, there was a lot of belief in his person, in his teaching. He gathered some followers, he made impact, he fed 5,000 people. The scriptures have a lot of story that have come from generation to generation, translated into various languages. And the fact of what had happened around Bethlehem, around Galilee, around Capernaum, they have become historical stories, historical documents handed over like tradition from one good group to another. So the life of Jesus in dying was a great disappointment. This was like annihilation. They had looked upon him as who would even save Israel. Don't forget, these were oppressed people. They were under the Romans, who were the colonial lords. They were under the Jews earlier, under the Egyptians earlier. They were under other tribes, the Phoenicians and the people of Tyre and Sidon, and the smaller tribes that were engaging them. So the believing Jews who had looked upon a God who will save them, a Messiah, had seen in this Christ the earthly Messiah who would liberate them from their troubles. And here now, this Jesus is put out on a cross to die. And we might even know that when he was being crucified or taken to the place of death, many of those who believed in him even ran away. They even denied him. And that is the normal fear. But upon his resurrection, therefore, that first early morning, Mary Magdalene had just gone to put oil. That is a tradition. We even do it in our own cultures, to embalm the dead body. Tell me why soldiers will be kept to guard someone who has died. That is unbelievable. It's recorded in the Bible that the Jews put out soldiers to guard him. And tell me why soldiers who are put out to guard him will be sleeping. Because the soldiers are now told, tell a lie. Say that while we were sleeping, you are supposed to be on guard. People came and stole his body. If you told a lie, or for example, you as a soldier in the Roman legion in those days, or even in these days, you sleep during duty, you will be executed immediately for failure to perform. So the resurrection of Christ is the adumbratio, the breaking of God's mighty power in human nature. God has for once again shown his superior might, that thing we call death, which was the point of tragedy, the point of annihilation, the point of finiteness, that God has broken it into a newness of a life that has no more stop, no more finiteness, a life that is eternal. Mary Magdalene went to embalm, seeing the grave empty. And of course, when you read further, you will see Mary seeing Jesus in another chapter in John, and even wanting to embrace him when she recognizes the voice. And Jesus said, don't touch me until I ascend to my Father, but go and tell my young people, my disciples. And the disciples went back to their original practices of fishing. He had taken them from that beruf, from that profession, to come and join him and spread the word of God. I will make you fishers of men. So they stopped fishing fish and became fishers of men. And you will see that this is a drama that is pieced together. And this is not something for simple logic or even simple intuition. This is faith that is received. And only in the spirit and only with docility and humility, not with brain work like if I would deal with technology. So the teaching about Easter is something that embarrasses a lot of people, because scientists cannot understand with all their science how somebody who has died can rise again. Doctors with all their strength cannot rise someone who has died in a hospital. I do think, with all due respect, that the feast of Easter is the depth of spirituality of Christians and all those who believe. And we must respect that faith which they have. And it is a faith that is not built on speculation. It is a faith that contains entirety of what they believe, like what you have said. If the resurrection did not happen, then our faith is useless. That is St. Paul writing. So this belief in the resurrection of Christ is just like one says, I believe in God. You have not seen God, but yet you believe. And it is so real and so true. Such also is the resurrection of Christ. It's not a matter of debate, because someone can say, I do not believe. Then you don't believe, you stay aside. But those who believe, this is the content of their faith. Jesus Christ died, Jesus Christ rose, Jesus Christ will come again, and Jesus Christ has become the meaning in life for those who believe. We respect this faith. Some believe in this faith. Some practice this faith. The consequence is, what does this faith have for action, for nation building, for performance, for personal spirituality, for purification, for giving back to society, for building peace and community? Jesus has given us that his resurrection must become point for a country like Nigeria, wallowing in darkness and indiscretion and lack of orientation. Easter can become a point for orientation, that we must believe that we can rise. We should not be people who are apathic and say Nigeria is forgotten. Please forget Nigeria. Nothing is happening here. No, we can believe that this Nigeria can be built again by strength, by inner character, by spirituality. We can believe that we can live together, a country of multi-ethnicity. And I think these are areas where the Feast of Easter, therefore, is a point of departure, a point not of logic, a point not of simple languages, because even human words are not enough to explain the greatness of the divine in human interventions and in human history. How can I explain my own life? Is it with words? Life is a mystery and a great gift. So Easter is gift, Easter is challenge, Easter is opportunity, Easter is the cross, but Easter is the life that transcends all life, a life fully lived in life where all who believe are reconciled once again. And I do think that the sacrifice which we talk about and the entire journey of 40 days, which my brother, Father George Ehusani, has very eloquently tried to show, and these are things that will lead us, therefore, through purification into life, into newness, into a country where we do hope that with those who lead, with those who are led, with those who are to be born, we can look back and look front and say, here on earth, God's work must become our work.
Professor Obiaraike, thank you. You've actually delved into the, of course, realm where I think that, of course, we can begin to apply logic. That's the realm where it comes to, of course, nation building. So we do know that, you know, Jesus Christ lived, of course, in an earthly environment, you know, within a community. And, of course, the fact that we're discussing him today means that he affected that community, of course, in which he lived in a very, very unique way. Father Ehusani, I'd like for you to talk to us. Is man, therefore, you know, within the context of spirituality and nation building, is man a being unto himself or a being unto others? And if the latter is the case, how has that, you know, how has he affected, you know, his, of course, environment? We are situating it, of course, to Nigeria.
Well, the truth of we are social beings. We find meaning, we find fulfillment in relating with others. That is certain. And it's not just about Christians, it's all human beings. And we find, excuse me, we find greater fulfillment when we serve others. There is the natural, instinctual, tendency in human beings to want to serve themselves. But St. Augustine says that the Lord has created us for himself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in him. Just as our hearts will remain restless if we are selfish and self-centered, we won't find fulfillment unless we reach out beyond ourselves and outside ourselves. All spiritual teachers have emphasized that the human being does not have the capacity to find fulfillment within himself, must go beyond and outside himself in order for us to find fulfillment. That is where service of others comes. That is where sacrificial love comes in. Jesus constantly taught about sacrificial love, serving others, loving others to the point of feeling pain ourselves. So Easter is a period to emphasize that. I keep saying that we need to begin to distinguish between our ritual practices, which are supposed to enhance spirituality, and what spirituality really is. When I looked at your topic, the ritual practices, the religious practices, the prayers, and so on and so forth, they could be so selfish and self-centered. Sometimes it's just emotional outburst. It's not the same as spirituality. However, authentic spiritual practice, religious practices, excuse me, authentic religious practices are supposed to help spirituality, grow persons that are advancing daily in their spiritual connection.
Can you explain to us the concept of spirituality?
Your God consciousness. A person's God consciousness is my simple way of defining spirituality. What is your consciousness of God? What is your consciousness of the supernatural life? What is the level of your soul advancement? What is your level of transcendence? If you look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, now the highest level is transcendence, meaning what I said before about transcending your fleshy material needs and beginning to find fulfillment in something beyond the flesh, something beyond materialism, something beyond consumerism, to find fulfillment in that entity that is beneath, beyond and above, which we call the spiritual. So when the human being is engaged, constantly engaged in that connection with spiritual beings, with God, and with going beyond the material, then you call that spiritual. Now, so the level of consciousness of a human being about this reality that is beyond the lower parts of the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that will be spirituality. And I really wonder the extent to which many people who say they are Christians and Muslims in this country are truly growing in spite of years of practice. I wonder how many people are really growing in spirituality, because you get to know people who are growing in spirituality by their purity of heart, their calmness of soul, their gentleness, their compassion. These are all universally acknowledged as elements of a deeply spiritual life, that the person has purity of life, of heart, that the person is calm and gentle, not so easily irritated as we see in Nigeria. Look at the way Nigerians drive. The level of irritability and so on, and road rage by people who have just left the church, people who have just left the mosque. It is evidence that this is not spirituality. These are not people who are growing on the spiritual level.
All right, we'll stop you there. You have actually delved into the intricacies of spirituality, and I think we have taken that. It's well understood. And now let's go to Dr. Uke Ikechukwu. Now, talking about spirituality and what have you, Nigerians are deeply committed, in religious obligations, engaging in pilgrimages and prayer sessions, even across the globe. And, we wouldn't know how much of this devotion to things of God had been reflected in our, secular issues when it comes to governance, politics, and what have you. I raised this issue because we just concluded general elections in this country, and we know that we experienced violence across the nation, and this violence have been perpetuated by people who are also being funded by the people in power. Otherwise, the possibility of having the scale of violence we had in that election wouldn't have been. Now, in this connection, how would Nigerians in the positions of authority try to ensure that they provide the services required by them to build this nation?
Well, my first observation is that we begin all official events with prayers, then spend the meeting time planning how to steal, inflate contracts, lower the quality of roads, decide sharing formula for kickbacks, and when we finish that, we also have a closing prayer. That's the extent of our spirituality. But I'll move aside and I'll touch on sacrifice and the true identity of Christ and then come back to how it relates to all of this. But just an aside to probably 20 listen to Professor Biora. It feels good to let him go on. And I think on programs like this, there must be a prior understanding of what is expected of participants, because there's a great value. You can see a man who is truly, well entrenched in ecclesiastical knowledge and his calling as a priest. And I think that should be taken into account so that we don't limit the benefit from individuals because of the structure, or reduce the participation of individuals also because of the structure of the program. Now, the man spoke about sacrifice, and that's an element that a lot of people ignore. He spoke about letting go of that which you will ordinarily want to have, but because of your spirituality, you take it. The concept of sacrifice, if we limit it to material things, oh, I've just killed a ram, so I'll give you the leg. This is now Christmas, let me take some goat or chicken or cow to my Muslim friend. We diminish the concept of sacrifice. Sacrifice in the genuine spiritual sense for anybody who is thinking of salvation boils down to letting go of activities, actions, thoughts, and things that diminish your spirituality, so that effort to remain upright becomes the substance of sacrifice and not the gestures we observe. As Father Husani observed, you've made a lot of sacrifice. You've even given your tithe, you donated. The church announced that you've given 90 people scholarship. And as you're driving out of the gate, you're cursing the man who is trying to park properly. That's not it. So on the issue about the linkage between all this spirituality and our daily lives, even the scriptures tell you that it's in the deed you see the substance of anybody's true nature, true spirituality or identity. We have people who go to mosque and who go to church. We have people who call themselves members of one religion or the other because that's where their parents gave back to them, and that's what they are doing. Just like the way the food you eat mostly is traceable to your background, your cultural context, so is it that the religion you profess is actually a consequence of your personal history and not your spirituality. You made declarations. Oh, I know that the Lord is the Son of the Almighty. A repetition that is not the same as realizing that you're speaking of one who came from him directly and who therefore is not like you and whose existence predated even the womb in which he was carried in Nazareth. You see, these are deep mysteries. Mysteries that must become knowledge for you and therefore drive your conviction. But when you repeat all these things and then conveniently put them aside when it comes to your daily life, that is the perfect explanation for the kind of environment in which we have. Where in church or in the mosque or in other religions, goodness is preached, the evil of lying is preached, the need to be upright is preached, and then the person preaching is the moderator during a ceremony, and the man they all know is not honest, is getting an award in the church, and the pastor, usually most of the new breed prosperity preaching ones, and says the Lord has done it. Yet everybody to the last person has some faint suspicion, if not certainty, that the man had looted some money. And so you find that the platform that should actually drive first spirituality and then let spirituality pervade the rest of society becomes a recruitment platform for irresponsible citizenship, for our moral young people, for a new generation of looting adults and leaders. And so the state is subverted, our spirituality is subverted, and confusion reigns. So when you're then talking about good governance, you become an annoying minority. I mean, it has to happen for me. It would be permanent. I need to sing that in church. Forgetting that in doing that, all the virtues which even Christ himself taught, you must subvert them, you must become vain, arrogance must come into it, humility must disappear, and you must come late to church so that more people will see your new clothes. Your spirituality gets aborted in the very process of saying the Lord has done it for you. Now, there is no magic at all in seeing how that very quickly and simply and straightforward translates into the kind of society we have now. A nation made up largely of unbelievers who mouth one religion or the other, but in the sight of God. I don't want to finish that sentence.
All right, Dr. Okechukwu, thank you. Now, if we, and I like every person here to probably speak to this, issue. If we look at the level of corruption today, we look at, the rate of crime and criminality, even in places you least expect, among people you would ordinarily not believe, would have the capacity, to perform or do such things. You begin to wonder the level of their, spirituality. And I'm wondering, is there a place in the holy books? Let me start with Imam. Is there a place in the holy book for nation building? Because everybody, prefers one faith or the other.
Yeah, I think the holy books or the scriptures are more concerned about national building than individualism, because all the religions indicated in one way or the other that our spirit is more important than our flesh. And we practically believe in that, because when we find out that the flesh is dead, I mean the person is dead, the flesh is there, we can't do anything, we just go and bury it, meaning that it is no more important, it is useless to us. But when the spirit is there, when the life is there, we intermingle with it. Therefore, the bottom line is, when you see people, a nation is decaying, that means the level of spirituality is zero there, or less. That is why they can't build themselves. We are more concerned about materialism, and that is why we loot the country. We are not concerned with our spirituality.
Is there a specific place, for instance, in the Quran, that speaks about, the need for, man generally in generic terms now, to be part of the nation building or the building of the community within which he or she lives?
Of course. If we look at the Quran, we find in Surah An-Nisa, that's the fourth chapter of the Quran, we find the Almighty saying that you should worship one Lord and give rights to the people. When we say give right to the people, that means that we are now talking of the community, the society, building the society by giving every person his due right. If I am to build my nation, that means that I am concerned with every individual in the nation. And I am less concerned of my own ego, my own selfishness. That is why whenever the Quran speaks of right, it starts with the highest right, that is the Almighty, then coming to the parents, then down to the entire a nation, the entire society that you live in. So, in essence, we are saying that the Quran is telling us always to give right to the people, their own right. And when we say they give everyone his right, that means we are building the nation. And lastly, the Prophet ﷺ, according to the Quran, he was told to first Jerusalem while praying, but his mind always is with the Grand Mosque of Mecca. Why? Because he is concerned with his own place of birth. He was concerned with his own place of birth because he loves where he was born. And the Quran told us how Ibrahim alayhi salam, or Abraham, prayed for his people, for his nation. And we are urged to pray for our people, for our nation. That means we must build our nation by ourselves.
Okay, let me bring in...
hold on, Claire. I want to amplify the question you earlier asked, and I'd like Obiorike to come in here, and that's with respect to crimes and criminality in the country, which is on the increase. We hear about kidnappings, and we also have communal clashes across the nation. Just 2 days ago, the president was actually not happy about the development in thief-juking clashes in Taraba and such similar ones across the country. Now, how can this nation be reorientated? Of course, we know that religiosity in the country has not worked in terms of ensuring that we do the right things as it concerns good governance and, of course, the individual behavioral patterns that we have. Of course, Reverend Father Hisson talks about driving and other secular activities that we engage in. How can we begin to reenact what should be the right concept of life?
I would like to thank you for this question, Kirian. The simple things are established during this discussion, that religiosity is one aspect, spirituality is another aspect, and we've been able to show that too much of religiosity may not necessarily translate to spirituality. And now, because we discussed spirituality and looking at Easter, which is the topic, we would like to look at that person of Jesus Christ who was a teacher and a prophet and a healer. He played those roles. As teacher, he taught people the right things and the truth. As prophet, he criticized the environment in which he found himself. He had strong words to criticize the Roman Empire, the leaders of the people, those who abuse others. And it is the work of the church and the work of spiritual leaders and those who have taken up these responsibilities by virtue of office to also speak to these problems in society. Often you find that those prophets who preach are looked upon as opponents, and of course politicians pursue them, and then they are looked upon as people who are not praise singers. I would like to think that the question therefore is very, very clear in the context of Nigeria. We have a state that is nearly failed, and not because we are not wealthy or not resourceful or not talented or not multipliable, no, but because we have a leadership that is blind or half blind or does not turn the face the right place. We have mediocrity as practice. You have qualified people, give them the work. Then you go and pick mediocres based on ethnic levels, based on nepotism, or those vices which a teacher, a preacher, a prophet must criticize and also call to bear. Because anytime you train a young boy in a university who is not qualified to be a medical doctor, you give that person a certificate, she goes into the theater to kill people because he's not certified. Anytime you graduate an engineer, give that engineer a certificate, that one goes to build houses that fail and bridges that do not work. And anytime you have people who say they've studied political science, but they bought their results and they did not do the right things, they plagiarized their thesis, what you've done is you set people out there in the public space who loot the nation. So we have a challenge as preachers of the word and as spiritual leaders to also talk truth to power. We have a country called Nigeria with a lot of good people, many, many good people. Simple human beings, innocent people living in their villages, doing the right things, but they are not led by. We have good leaders also, but the majority of the problems we have, you call them communal clashes, you call them bribery and corruption. Dr. Ikechukwu had spoken a lot about the discrepancy between the faith we live and the actions we show, and we cannot keep quiet. It is the function of the leader, of the spiritual leader, not to think about, do they praise me, but to speak the truth. And the truth is that we have corruption that is unbridled and people are hardly charged. We have EFCC cases hanging out there for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, and people are not being charged enough. We say we want to fight corruption. We've made it an agenda of government since 1966 when the first coup happened. But corruption continues to grow and grow in quantity and in quality and in dimensions. And anytime there's corruption, it means there's no water, there are no roads that are built, they are not sustainable, and the things don't happen. Inflation continues, and people's lives are lost. We should be in a position to challenge these structures. There are structural problems, but often they come from human beings who have refused to be spiritual, like my colleagues at this panel have tried to put across. We do feel that our country, Nigeria, can rise. I just came back from Geneva a few days ago, and what do I see there? The churches are not filled up, the mosques are empty, but everybody stands on the road when it is red. Everybody pays tax, and you don't need to be told to pay tax. You declare freely how much money that came into your purse during the year, and you pay the required tax based on law for it. No one forces you to pay tax. You do it because it is the right thing. And this is now imbibed virtue. I go to buy newspapers in the morning. There is no newspaper seller. You just pick the newspaper and throw in the coin. Nobody is watching. There is no camera. I could take the newspapers and not pay, but my conscience does not allow me to do that. This is a matter of education, of training. How do you explain to me that parents in families will go and do external exams for their children? That teachers in classes will give expo to their students to pass exam? Where is the hard work? And when we blame the leaders on top, we forget the papa and mama who started it at home. We forget the teachers who did it in classes. We forget the preachers in the parishes who told the people, whether it's in the Pentecostal or otherwise, no, when you bring more money, then God will do more things for you. This is not an exchange. So we have to look at all the levels of failure beyond just the leadership of the nation to all the nooks and crannies of our country. I do look at myself as having failed if those whom I deal with do not imbibe the qualities and virtues which I try to practice myself. And the greatest teaching is not actually talking. The greatest teaching is living what you preach. And it brings us back to Easter. Jesus spoke about sacrifice. He paid the supreme price. He was innocent. He allowed their court to condemn him. Pilate asked him, don't you know I have power to release you? And Jesus said, no, you don't have. You may have legal power, but you don't have spiritual power over me, except it was given to you. We must be in a position here in Nigeria to look at those who hijack the entire space of people's freedom and liberty and resources and livelihoods. We must look at that space as being stolen, and we should now start inch by inch to fight for the right things, to go to work on time, to do the things we are supposed to do, to stand for integrity, to stand for virtue. And it is not easy. That's why the language of sacrifice is important, because you don't have good examples, but you should be the example you want to see in others. I want to thank you because I know others may want to contribute to this. God bless Nigeria, God bless our country, and may this feast of Easter be for all of us a time for renewal. We need to renew so that we can continue to move forward. Thank you very much.
Monsignor Professor Obiorike, we thank you for your comments on this program. Well, if time allows us, we'll return to you. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and I believe, quite frankly, that you are enjoying the program because of all the facts that are coming out from the panel here. The facts are indeed real, and we have to work on them. Now, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. Don't go away.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toma Damaden and Ishak Modibo-Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA Standard Studio ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency Caution. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again. That is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. It's Easter edition of Good Morning Nigeria, and we're dealing with spirituality and nation building. I'd like to thank, of course, Professor Obiorike so much for the points that he actually raised. And I'd like to take it further. Earlier on, I asked that question, if there was any provision of nation building in the Holy Books. Father Ehusani, are there examples of spiritual applications to issues in the books that we could also leverage on?
Abundant examples. I mean, Jesus Christ teaches just that core message of serving others. That's what we need. That your life finds fulfillment when you serve others, when you love others, when you forgive others, when you have mercy for others. That's all you need. Jesus Christ was not concerned about little nation states. He was concerned about humanity. So it's not about how to build Nigeria, how to build Ghana, or how to build Togo. Now, that's not important for Jesus, because for Jesus, we are all one, really. So all these national boundaries are irrelevant for Jesus. I mean, it is humanity, the individual and humanity. The book of Proverbs says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Numerous teachings of the scriptures about the kind of people who should run the affairs of men and women. When those kind of people are not there, or when the wicked hijack, the authority structures, then we suffer the kind of things we suffer. Right now, referred to it. The nation state has been hijacked. Religion itself has been hijacked. I mean, a lot of what we have today is the triumph of mediocrity at every level. On the educational level, on the health level, on the religious level, on the political level, there is the triumph of mediocrity. And we need to get back to the basics. If we are going to rescue this country, then we need to begin to say, where did we get it all wrong? And the nations that have it right, where did they get it right? And we have examples of nations that are doing well. Where did they get it right? I am saying that selfishness, self-centeredness, nepotism, ethnic bigotry, religious bigotry, these are the areas we have got it wrong. And we need to get back to each person saying, what can I contribute to building a nation? What is it that God has given me? And God has given to every one of us enormous talents that we can contribute. But when instead all we think about is harvesting, for ourselves, without thinking of the other. My people have a saying that it is the madman who says that this is where I put fire. The one burning on the hill is not my work. It's only a madman who thinks that way. The sane person, excuse me, the sane person knows that the fire that I put here could extend to the hill over there. Nigerians keep destroying the national space, thinking that by serving themselves only and by looting the resources of the commonwealth for themselves, that they can have any fulfillment, any life of fulfillment.
What should, at this point in time, we have security and other issues that is threatening, or that are threatening, nation building. What should the clergy, what message should the clergy be dishing out to Nigerians?
My colleagues have highlighted them. Where we are facing, they say, if you do not change your course, you will end up where you are facing. The choices we have been making since independence, they have landed us here. The wrong choices we have been making. We need to start making other type of choices. Choices that benefit the common good. The common good is the good of everyone, and not just my own selfish good. We have been making choices focused on my own selfish good to the neglect of the common good. When we start serving the common good, these other things will sort themselves out. What we see today in form of violence here and there, they are only symptoms of a sick nation. They are symptoms of individuals who are sick or who are behaving like sick people, and their nation is now manifesting the evidences of a sick nation. That's what some people say is a failing nation or a failed nation. But what does it mean? It means that individuals and groups have for long been making the wrong choices. Choices that will not take us to where we hope to be. They will not lead us home. Until we get back. Let's say take Easter now and take the values of Easter. I say sacrifice, compassion, the common good above individual good. Take those values and begin to work with them. That's the only way we can transform our nation.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We have messages coming from Nigerians who are watching this program. But before we do that, I'd like Dr. Oke Ikechukwu to come in here, just a kind of a summary. Professor Obiorike had actually, in his analogy, mirrored the situation in Switzerland and perhaps other European countries where the churches and mosques are never filled up. Yet, people imbibe good virtues in all their undertakings. What is particularly wrong with Nigeria? I'm not asking this person because I'm not part of the Nigerian society, but I'm asking that because even when Nigerians travel abroad to sojourn in other nations, there are litany of misbehaviors, so litany of some bad behaviors that, of course, hit back at us, back home here, South Africa, Ghana, name it, across the globe. What is wrong with us?
There is nothing wrong with us. And in the countries mentioned, there's nothing particularly right or wonderful about them, except that they've been able to develop the state into a dependable institution, whereby the institutions of state are well developed, the people are well trained, equipment is provided, and there's immediate consequence for misconduct. So when you're in a place where misbehavior is unattractive, the incentive to misbehave will drop to zero. That's what you have in those countries. But you also find something else we sometimes don't look at when we praise those nations. They're also mostly among the most immoral, I don't want to use the word immoral nations. Namely, the values of humanity have given place to the values of commerce and accepted intellectually sound behavior without a moral foundation. Yes, the churches are empty, the mosques are empty, but it is not filling the churches and the mosques that will take anybody to heaven. Neither is it behaving well and paying your tax. It is whether you're truly human. Are these not also the countries where you have some of the most incredible sexual aberrations, where you have serial killers? Of course, they are caught quickly because the law, the legal system and the social structures are sound, but the truth of the matter is that we can't afford a one-dimensional look at these things. But coming back home, yes, we have more churches, we have more night vigils, we have holy water from different reverend fathers on sale, and if you don't have the one of one reverend father, and I will offer you the other one and we'll compare. And you find people who have been doing this for the last 15 years, doing crossover. After the crossover, the landlord they are owing is still on their case, and they don't ask themselves what they've crossed over to. But for the last 15, 20 years, they don't miss the crossover, the adorations and everything. Their lives haven't changed. They have gallons of holy water. If you touch it, they will injure you for it. But they are not taking any, doing any cost-benefit analysis. So coming round to how that affects the tone and texture of the nation, let's break it down to simple terms. This is a nation which for the last 40 years has been doing the wrong things. Allocation of oil well is by discretion. So if I know you, I give you one. In the same period, trillions of dollars have come in, and they can be traced to individuals across every part of the country who have become very, very wealthy, and around whom poverty has blossomed. Then we have a democracy, and within the last 20 years of our democracy, we've also received trillions of dollars, and we can find people who have held positions, either as former governors, senators, and all of that, who have become very, very wealthy, also all over the country in every constituency, around whom there's also poverty. We can see a lot of money budgeted for roads and infrastructure. We recall that in every governor's tenure, you see the opening of boreholes and so many things. These same places, the next governors go to give them boreholes, and the people are watching. And you have governors who every month spend or take between 700 and 1.5 billion for security votes in an environment where the police is underpaid, where security agencies, SSS is not well funded, and where teachers are not paid, and that money is not accounted for. Do you think you're recruiting patriots? No. Or responsible citizens? No. You have. You can see what's going on everywhere. We successfully created a new crop of criminals, socialized into criminality because they have lost faith in all the structures that conduce to responsible citizenship. That is what we are seeing. And so they end up in the churches. Everybody is looking for a miracle. And the degree of spiritual ignorance is such today that, as you will recall, I think that was in 2017, when some criminals were caught and they were saying, no, 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 even we prayed that the Lord should only allow us kill good people during this operation. They no longer understand the meaning of prayer, the meaning of God, the meaning of spirituality, and they are in the majority. Okay. And the ultimate victim today remains those who should have done things but didn't. Dr.
Kechiwu, thank you. So, Imam Khalid, how can we reintroduce spirituality into governance structure? You know?
First of all, if we introduce it into our mosques and churches, when the imams and the pastors are material, we preach materialism indirectly or directly, we can't change anything because people are looking at us. They are counting on us. They want us to show them the way. We don't even know the way. We think by acquiring a lot of wealth, you have a lot of followers. And by having a lot of followers, you end up into the kingdom of the government, not the kingdom of the Lord. We want to go to the kingdom of the government. We don't want to go to the kingdom of the Lord. So we have to change the structure of our mosques, our preachings, and our imams and pastors. Secondly, we must teach our people how to say no to nonsense. How to, within the context of the law, say, where is our budget?
Okay.
How was our budget spent? But when we teach the people to also go and collect their own share from the person who looted their rights and keep quiet, then nothing will work.
Okay. So the bottom line is we must again go back to our spiritual leaders for guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going for spiritual leaders when people in government go for pilgrimages in Israel, in Saudi Arabia, and what have you? So they receive the message when it comes to spiritual. They receive the message.
Okay.
When they come back,
in less than 30 seconds.
Now let's
Dr. K, in less than 30 seconds, we want to round up.
Yes. Basically, to emphasize the point he's making and saying that it's not about pilgrimage, it's not about preachment. People see. When the local government chairman collects 200 million every month and does nothing, and they see him praised in the church or in the mosque and respected by others who should admonish him, we are not moving forward.
All right, let's quickly take our tweets just before we conclude our conversation. Daily Jack Solomon says, truth be told, the national anthem and national pledge contain invocation of God. The second stanza of the national anthem is a direct prayer to God. Unfortunately, it seems we are not in tune with spirit and truth to allow that God sing to rule in our affairs. It's time to return to God, he says.
Now, Festus Akimbewa says, if we Nigerians truly have deep spiritual relationship with God, then we should also have deep spiritual relationship with our country and our fellow Nigerians. It's by doing so we can solve the many problems facing our country, because these problems are man-made.
And Francis Jetro says, oh, what a great topic. Now, my take on this, no nation. I mean, human beings can't survive without being spiritual, because life itself is spiritual. Nigeria, as it is today, standing because of the prayers. All faith work. If not, Nigeria, by now, might have been divided, he says.
Okay, now we skipped Law Alpha C, who says that Nigerians are very religious, no doubt, but a situation whereby religious leaders enjoin or brainwash their followers to see political leaders as their enemies is ungodly and selfish.
All right, we have quite a number of others. Would like to, of course, just acknowledge them. We're running out of time. Dele Jack Solomon, Festus Akimboiwa, we have Omogbalan, Ibrahim Tudu, Elijah Musa, Muhammad Adija, and Cecilia Koroma, Sane Michael Omokuje. All of you, we thank you. We always appreciate your tweets and, of course, your contributions to our program.
And it's on this point that we concluded this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you all for watching. And before we leave, we'd like to appreciate our guests who did justice to this discussion. And, of course, we'll begin by telling you that Reverend Father George Ehuseni, Director, Lockstara Foundation, just left a short while ago. He has a mass to attend to. We thank him, actually, for being part of the program. And, of course, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, and Senior Fellow Nnamdi